In accordance with the open government law, notices were first sent to the media on February 5th and again on February 8th. For the record, today is Tuesday, February 12th, and the time now is 9:06 a.m. The committee will hear and accept testimony, both oral and written, on the following. Bill number 13-35 COR, introduced by Amanda Shelton, Therese M. Terlahi, Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, Regine Bisco-Lee, Jose Pito Terlahi, and Talina Cruz Nelson. An act to add a new Chapter 32 to Title IX GCA relative to protecting elderly adults from abuse, neglect, and exploitation by providing criminal punishment to those who would harm our Manamku and disabled people. The committee will also hear and accept testimony on the confirmation hearing of Jane Flores to serve as Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and the confirmation hearing for Melanie W. Brennan to serve as Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues. Thank you for joining me. Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Sabina Perez, Senator Kelly Marsh-Titano, Senator Luis Munya, Senator Will Castro, and Senator Telo Terlahi. Siduas Maasi. Oh, I'm sorry. Taitugui. My apologies, Dispensa. A lot of T's, that's right. Okay. So some general rules for the public hearing today. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Unless otherwise decided by the chairwoman, those testifying will be recognized in the order they signed up. Written testimony may be read. Lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Written testimony should be submitted to the committee for photocopying. Testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the bill or resolution being heard. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of the author or any member of the panel is not permitted. No debate or rebuttal shall be allowed between two individuals testifying. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. The individual may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the panel. When speaking, please ensure that the microphone is on and that you are speaking into the microphone. Individuals are asked to state their name for the record. Thank you. Bill 13-35. We will now begin to hear testimony on Bill 13-35, and as the author, I will provide an opening statement. Our culture is one of respect, most especially for our Manamku and those in our community with disabilities. Unfortunately, there are those out there who exploit these populations for their own gain through threat, intimidation, or physical violence. While other jurisdictions had specific criminal penalties for the exploitation and abuse of these vulnerable groups, Guam had no such specific law. Bill 13-35 would provide such criminal penalties for the financial exploitation or abuse of Manamku and the disabled, providing them an extra layer of protection. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, abuse of the elderly is disturbingly common, whether it be emotional, physical, or financial abuse. The National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that financial exploitation of the elderly costs our senior citizens $2.9 billion a year. This type of abuse includes scams, forgery, identity theft, and coercing seniors and the disabled into giving up their assets. In a meeting with our local division of senior citizens yesterday, they shared with me that financial exploitation is the #1 most referred issue in their division, and the numbers have been climbing every year. The other two top issues that get referred are cases of neglect and psychological or emotional abuse. Our Manamku and disabled people deserve better and the full protection of the law, and it is important to do everything we can to protect the human dignity and in doing so continue to preserve the heritage and culture of our people. I will note that we did get some notes from legal counsel about certain terminology in the bill, which we will incorporate in the committee's amended version. At this time, I'd like to call up individuals to testify. Mr. Arthur Sinagostine, Mr. William Regis, Ms. Nilda Orentia, Ms. Rose Hermosa, Mr. Jermaine Alerta. If you'd like to come up. Thank you very much, Art.
Good morning, Senator Shelton, Chairperson of the Committee on Higher Education and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens and members of this committee. I appear before you today in support of Bill 13-35, and I am Arthur Sonagusine. I'm the administrator with the Division of Senior Citizens, of which the Bureau of Adult Protective Services is one of the bureaus within this division. The following is provided in response to Bill 13-35. Enact to add a new Chapter 32 to Title IX GSA relative to protecting elderly adults from abuse, neglect, and exploitation by providing criminal punishment to those who would harm our manumko and disabled people. The intent to give teeth to an existing mandate that protects seniors age 60 and older and adults with a disability age 18 to 59 is commendable. However, throughout the bill, there appears disabled adult in similar reference, which we would recommend be changed throughout to read adult with a disability. Above this recommended change, Section 32101 definitions, letter B, defines caregiver as adult household members, neighbors, among others on the list. It would be recommended that this be further clarified or possibly be removed. It's not all members of a household are necessarily providing care to a care recipient, or should be expected to, nor are neighbors assuming a caregiving role, or are realistically expected to take on this role or be mandated to. In the same section, the bill states the caregiver means a person who has been entrusted with or has assumed responsibility for the care or the property. The reality is, some caregivers take on the full responsibility for the care of one who requires care, while in other situations, property is managed separate and apart, and as such, these individuals have a fiscal role and are not viewed in practice as caregivers. In the same section, it's stated to perform the normal activities of daily living. My recommendation is to delete normal as compared to abnormal activities of daily living. In practice, it is activities of daily living. Definition of activities of daily living: the inability to perform one or more of the following 6 activities of daily living without personal assistance, standby assistance, supervision or cues: eating, dressing, bathing, toileting, transferring in and out of bed, and walking, and it's in reference to the administration of community living. Further in the same section G, facility means assisted living facility, adult family care home, and adult daycare center. I would request clarification on adult family care home as to whether we are speaking of a licensed or non-licensed home setting. If the intent is to have a home license to provide care to a specific number of eligible individuals, we would recommend this be clearly defined, as rules and regulations for such a facility would also need to be promulgated. Under Section 3104B2B, it states, this section does not apply to B, bona fide charitable donations to nonprofit organizations, NPO, that qualify for tax-exempt status. We would recommend a local entity, perhaps the Judicial Review, be charged with reviewing charitable donations made by seniors age 60 and older and adults with disabilities age 18 to 59 to nonprofit organizations to ensure the donors' basic needs are being provided and met. If it is determined that the donation would negatively impact the donor's ability to meet their needs, the intended donation, either monetary or property, would not be endorsed and transacted. Instead, the entity should work to direct the intended donation to meet the recurring expenses of the elder or adult with a disability to ensure basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, are met. Further, I recommend the tax-exempt status be clarified to state either local exemption or is the exemption from MPOs who have been granted tax-exempt status from a government other than the government of Guam. And Senator, although not in the written part, in reference to your introduction where there are scams, that also would be a situation that we shared with you yesterday, in which we have phone calls and online scams that are taking place right now with our seniors. And so that's where the NPO tax-exempt status is also coming from. But in terms of the fiscal impact, the Program Coordinator 3 position is what we would request so that we can get the information out to our population as to the new provision of law with regards to criminal punishment. A PC3 for 12 months would have a financial impact of $65,018, which is comprised of salaries of $45,014 and benefits of $20,004. But given where we are this fiscal year, the first 5 months of FY19 would not be required, thus reducing the required amount by these months, or $27,090.85. The FY19 amount would be less these months and possibly an additional month, the monthly cost being $5,418.17. There would be recruitment that would need to take place. The amount that may be needed would be for the remaining 6 months of FY19, which would be $32,509. Also, Senator, this position is being proposed to be funded in FY 2020, the Program Coordinator 3 budget for the Division of Senior Citizens. And to have this position this fiscal year would be great, as the position, in addition to educating the community of the new provisions of law on penalties related to the abuse of adults with a disability age 18 to 59 and seniors age 60 and older. The position will also assume the responsibility of outreach and education for the prevention of adult abuse, as well as to manage the Guma Serenidad project and the legal assistance services contract, of which both are being managed by 2 social workers above their assigned caseloads. And as we had discussed yesterday, further, Madam Chairperson, I am requesting 2 amendments to the existing Public Law 31278. Section 2951 to be made. The first to refine the definition of unsubstantiated report to read as follows. Unsubstantiated report means a report pursuant to this chapter if an investigation by the Bureau of Adult Protective Services or its authorized agency determines that there is insufficient evidence of abuse to support the allegation of abuse, and to add a new section or provision of definition, letter W. Inconclusive report means a report pursuant to this chapter if an investigation by the Bureau of Adult Protective Services or its authorized agency determines that there is inconclusive evidence, but the existence of abuse cannot be disproved to the satisfaction of the investigating entity. Thank you very much, Senator, and members of the committee, and I will be available for any questions regarding the testimony.
Thank you, Mr. St. Augustine. Mr. Regis, would you wish to provide testimony?
It's just in regards to really the caregiver. I know that in our experience here, we have a lot of caregivers. I mean, we don't have a lot of caregivers. And this bill, as it is, would deter them from being a caregiver or even a witness to being to seeing somebody abuse. It really, we are trying to influence people to become caregivers, and I think taking a class about caregiving, I mean, that's the right situation. But to tell them that they're going to encounter these things just by being there, it's going to deter them. If you're a member of a family member, and you're going to see this bill, and then you're going to say to yourself, I don't want to be a caregiver. I'm going to give it up to the government, because anything I do, I would become a felon if I, abuse this person. And sometimes a lot of these things happen that are not even intentional. So we go case by case, and to look more into the, our findings. So defining a caregiver as somebody, a neighbor, you as a neighbor don't even want to become neighbors with the person that they're going to, that has a disability, because I don't want to get in trouble just being a neighbor, the way it's, I'm reading it. So, that's my...
Thank you, Mr. Regis. And yes, we will take into consideration the changes in definitions. Thank you. Nilda?
Good morning, Senator. My only comment, I support the bill. My only comment is the definition of disabled adult and some of the language used that Mr. St. Augustine mentioned on page 3, item 6. Just the definitions of not only disabled adult, but also the term family care home, the facility itself. That's it. But overall, I support the bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ms. Rose Hermosa?
Well, good morning, Senators, first and foremost. My sentiments reflect those of my administrator, Arthur San Augustine, as well as the acting supervisor right now. So just, we support the bill, just defining it clearly is what we're asking. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Jermaine Alerta?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Jermaine Alerta. I'm the Executive Director of the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council. I do have to preface that I don't have any testimony prepared. In my position, I take direction from the council, so I am not speaking on behalf of the council here. It's because they have not provided me with their collective testimony. So I just didn't want to make it appear as if the GDDC did not have any interest in this bill. I know the chairperson reached out to me and asked me to ask our council for their input, and I did. I put it out when the chairperson emailed me, and I immediately forwarded her email to our council members and said, Senator Shelton is asking for our input. Please let me know where you guys would like, how you would like to proceed. I do have to say that our council is made up of 60%. We have a 28-member council, and 60% of our membership are either individuals with developmental disabilities or their parents or their family members, right? And we do have to make the distinction between disabilities and developmental disabilities. A lot of the developmental disabilities occur before the age of 22. So they are impairments that, prohibit individuals from functioning as what we would typically label as normal individuals. They need assistance. So there is a distinction. But I do know that a lot of what I have spoken with some of our members, the bill does provide or does give, as Mr. San Augustine said, teeth to laws that are already existing, and it imposes harsher penalties, which may serve as a deterrent to anyone who has that very, who may, go down that path of taking advantage of either our seniors or individuals with disabilities. So I did want to preface everything that I said, that this is not the official position of the council, but it just in talks with some members. I will try to get more input from our members so that we can present the committee with a more clearer stance on where we are in regards to this bill. But I do want to thank you for reaching out and giving us the opportunity to present at least some of what we feel this bill represents. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alerta. And now we'll just take questions from my colleagues for the panel in front of us. Senator Terlahi?
Thank you very much for all your testimony and for being here this morning. I wasn't clear which positions all of you hold. I know you're all from Department of Public Health and in the Division of Senior Citizens, but are you in the Bureau of the Adult Protective Services? All three of you? Okay. Yeah, so that's very important. And also, Mr. San Augustine, I appreciate your recommendations for the bill, but yeah, so we're waiting for copies of your testimony, hopefully, to make sure we catch all those details. But for those who work at APS, I guess I just wanted to ask, how do you feel the current law is operating? Are you sufficiently able to prosecute abuse of elders? Because the law allows, that's what you exist for, right? The Adult Protective Services is there to point out abuse of elders and to prosecute that. And so what do you feel that there is teeth that needs to be put into that law, or are you sufficiently able to prosecute?
I think that, any law is always, it's changing. Our society is always changing. Our culture is always changing. So the laws are going to change, And so I feel that we do have enough, it would be sufficient enough to really go prosecute someone, but, and you're right also that it does need work And so with our current cases right now, we haven't really gone into and sent anyone to be prosecuted. And it's also I explained to Senator Shelton yesterday that even with the federal agencies that handle, you know, this, Secret Service agents or something like that, they also don't have they're not able to prosecute a lot of these criminals, abusers, you know. So yes, our law needs strengthening. It needs more teeth.
Okay, what has prevented, but we want to make sure that this law is focused on actually helping where you need the help, right? So we've tried to strengthen the penalties and make it very clear that these are violations of the law in case that was the dispute that was occurring. But maybe you could just help us, the committee, to be very clear what it is that is preventing you from referring cases, for example.
I think that we need to have a more collaborative effort in our community with our different agencies, especially working with the law. We need to be more, to have more of this relationship between the Attorney General's office, the police department. We need that bonding, or, you know, to really effort to be together where you know, we have a case, we can really easily talk to them regarding our cases, or, you know, if we have something to, you know, we have a case that needs a deeper, someone to look into it deeper than we're able to.
So is it part of your procedures to refer to the Guam Police Department or to the Attorney General for further investigation? And you're saying that you have made no referrals for how long? We have made referrals, but, you know, it takes a while because, you know, the police is short-handed, and, you know, they're short-staffed, and so. No, on their end, I understand, but on your end, I guess I'm asking how. Just want to make sure if we are shoring up where we need to shore up, are the referrals being made? There's some referrals being made to the police department. So you don't find an impediment to making referrals? No. All right. So after the referrals is where we're seeing maybe a backlog or no action? Perhaps? We haven't seen anything, so. Okay. All right. So, but your bureau and your ability to investigate and make a referral, you feel like that's doing well? Okay. And do you feel like, I mean, I know there were some recommendations specifically to, you know, focus on caregivers, right, the definition. Yes. And we don't want to, you're correct, thank you for pointing that out. We do not want to discourage caregivers. Yes. We are trying to. We have a shortage of caregivers, so we try to, you know, I think the best way is to be preventive. And so if we teach them and have them go through courses or classes, and I think OPG right now is doing that they need to go to class to know what a caregiver is, what it entails to be a caregiver. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's a good way to you know, bring people in and let them and also educate them. All right. Do you think that there's a mandatory reporting for caregivers right now? There is. All right. So do you think this then goes too far? The way it's written right now, it goes too far. Okay. So you think that the current mandatory reporting for caregivers is sufficient? Would you all agree on that? I mean, I think it needs work. But that way the proposed what Senator Shelton has proposed is really too much. It's going to,
It's going to deter a lot of people from becoming a caregiver. This is going to deter a lot of people from being witnesses to anything, because I myself, I'm like going to commit a felony if I even try to look into people's business. I don't want, I turn my head to the side and say, hey, I didn't see it. But you don't want that. You want to welcome people to come up and say, hey, this is what I saw.
Okay.
And I'm able to, give you in details of what I saw. Don't penalize me for, seeing something. I'm reporting to you.
Yes. Mr. San Augustine? Yeah.
Yeah. I have the existing mandate of Public Law 31-278. I'm comparing it to the proposed or the measure before us, the Bill 13-35. There's some very similar provisions in the definition of caregiver, and what we're bringing forth really is a concern of how far-reaching the proposed definition is going to be, which we're highlighting in our testimony, because it is the current proposed bill is adult household members,
Right.
and so that is very far-reaching neighbors, and that's our concern, which we have put in our testimony, is that neighbors are a source of referral. We've had neighbors come in and make referrals because they've known the family for years. They now are coming to our office saying, hey, the kids have all grown up, they've gone off island, it's just mom and dad, or mom passed away, it's just dad. And we can see that he needs help, and the grass is overgrown, he doesn't look as well kept as he used to be. And so neighbors are a source of support, of our informal support system. And I agree, we don't want to scare them away as a source of support, as well as the adult household members. If you take your household, and we know this in our culture, but you're going to take care of mom, but you also have adult children going to college, and so you're helping them, they're living with you, and everyone's okay with that. But this definition is going to include every person in that household. And that's what we're saying. And unless there's a provision that further clarifies, or it's amended to further clarify who it makes the composition of the household, it really is very far-reaching, because we don't want every household member to be included. We don't believe that that would be a requirement, because it may actually become a deterrent, or it may actually break down the family system, because a daughter or son who's a college student, well, mom, I can't stay with you because I know you're caring for your mom, grandma, but I got to focus on my studies, and I can't be expected or be held responsible or be investigated, let alone be investigated by the Bureau of Adult Protective Services, and you're in college, and we're saying, well, you're part of the household. I hope you know that, and as a result of that, in the current definition, if it goes as is presented, you're going to be a member of that case. And so we want to safeguard some of the systems that are already in place. And so that's why Senator Terlahi and Senator Shelton, we just wanted to bring the concern about perhaps some of the definitions and how far-reaching they are. The earlier question, Senator Terlahi, if I may, I think it's important that we do put these measures forward, because it really gives significance that there is abuse going on. It gives a recognition from our local law that there is going to be a mandate that if you in some way harm a senior or an adult with a disability, that there are legal repercussions, that there are criminal punishments associated to that. And no longer having to search through the law books, is this a simple assault, is it a third-degree assault? You have something that the practitioner in the field of social work, in the field of protective services, can quickly refer to and be a part of their presentation when they do education, outreach, and intervention. And so I think it's great that it's very specific to the population we serve, because they do need that added protection as a safeguard.
Okay, well, yes, that's our intent with this
Yes.
bill, is to bring awareness, but however, I want to make sure that if we're making referrals, because we're trying to deter, right? With
Yes, ma'am.
stricter penalties, of course, always the intention with stricter penalties is to deter. But if that's not going to deter, then, we're just putting people in jail, or, things like that, without achieving our goal. But so for the deterrent, that's why I'm asking whether APS is able to make their referrals, or, right now, we should be able to make our referrals, right? And we can follow up with the AG and the police department, what's happening with those referrals. Maybe if you could send us a report on that alone, we can. But yes, so these stricter penalties, in order to deter, I appreciate your plan to do outreach so that everyone will know that there are stricter penalties now, and that these specifically are the crimes. It's got a reminder again of what they shouldn't be doing already, hopefully, and that, yes, that there are stricter penalties and that you are going to be very proactive in making those referrals. So, all right, well, thank you very much. I hope that we can continue, and I want to thank you for all your good work. I know it's very hard to work in the field that you are working. I was a lawyer, I'm still a lawyer, but I worked for several years under that legal services contract. And it's very difficult to see these kinds of cases. And so my hat's off to you for the work that you do, because it's very hard work to do. It's hard to see our manamko not in ideal situations. And I know that's all. It's very eye-opening. Everyone needs to know what we are facing. So, Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Senator Perez?
So thank you for being here today and providing testimony. Yeah, I guess my concern is, we need to protect the Manamco from abuse. And then the other thing I would like to caution too is that the context that we live in, as Chamorro families or our families, where we do provide services to our family members. And so, the situation within our families could be complex, right? So the control is, and I'm just wondering to what extent are these cases, as far as when it comes to family context. I think before we criminalize our family members, I think it's important to have sort of like a guard against criminalizing our family members, and to what extent is support given to these family members. I understand that with our government, that we lack resources to provide the necessary means for caregiving, for one thing. I know there's a lack of caregivers in the system. There's a huge demand, and I think it's important that we need to support that very much so. And unfortunately, it only operates during the day schedules here in our government, and I think it's important to expand those services to go beyond, day services. So I think, it's important to help provide services. If every effort is given to that, I think that's what we need to push for. But of course, if there's any kind of misdoing, that needs to be also addressed and referred to the public audit. I'm sorry, the jury system. So I guess my question is, I'm just wondering if this bill it goes too far as criminalizing acts. That's just my concern as far as some of the definitions that are given to include a blanket definition of neighbors and family members. I think that that may go too far.
Senator, aside that, this is the whole bureau in here for the whole island. So aside being an investigator, we're also our social workers. So aside from what we do in investigating, a good amount of our work really deals with mediating and being a liaison between family members. So it is not our goal to criminalize. And that's why it's very important to really define unsubstantiated and inconclusive in our reports. And you're correct, there's really a lack of caregivers, and sometimes people get lost in translation for that matter. If I'm not mistaken, today we've received 123 referrals for FY19, and that is a lot to mediate, to say the least. And it goes from simple cases to really complex cases, which involves other agency and a lot of collaboration within our networks. And so with that being said, I do agree with what our administrator do say in terms of doing an outreach and being out there. And so with that being said, the PC3 position is really vital in what we do within our bureau. So thank you.
Senator, if I may add, there are many variables in the conduct of an investigation of these types of cases. But in addition to that, in the current provision of law, the social workers have to balance that with willful intent. And it's through that basis of willful intent is whether the proposed piece of legislation before us could be of assistance, because it's depending on the willful intent of the case. And that's where their job becomes real challenging, but that's their task, is to balance the details of the case and whether there was willful intent. And in those cases where there is willful intent, perhaps that's where these types of criminal punishment would be proper and suitable.
Thank you, Mr. Sinagistine. Thank you, Senator Perez. I just want to clarify that the intent of the bill is not to automatically make every referral from APS a felony case, but it's to give the teeth behind a case that might very well be elder abuse, especially when it comes to the financial abuse and neglect. So thank you very much. And Senator Kelly?
Hafaday. So thank you for your testimony, and thank you to Senator Shelton for working on this bill. It's such an important issue, of course, and it's so important to bring awareness to it and to re-examine. So it's a very good opportunity in that sense, as the senators before me have pointed out, you know, having us re-examine the law that's already in place and finding out how that is working and where it could be shored up. Those are each important activities. So I have a few comments and a couple of questions. The first question would be, just so that I'm understanding, when you were saying that this is the entire Bureau, are you saying that there are 4 people working within the Bureau? I just want to be clear on that.
The Bureau is comprised of a social supervisor, one which is vacant at this time due to retirement back in December. And so Mr. Regis, to my immediate left, is the acting supervisor. And then Ms. Nilda Orentia and Ms. Rose Hermosa are the field social workers, investigating social workers. So when Mr. Regis is not serving in the capacity as the acting social service supervisor, he is one of the 3 social workers. So the 3 of them plus a supervisor make up the whole Bureau.
And if I could understand, at least just for background context, when you say that there were 123 referrals that you needed to mediate, how were you able to handle that? Was that something you were able to handle last year?
Senator, we have 90 days to resolve any referrals, and so it's continuous. So we have 90 days to complete the investigation. And we manage with just the 3 of us, be it Mr.
Right.
Cruz, our acting supervisor, and Ms. Hermoso and myself. We managed to handle most of the referrals that we receive. And going back to Senator Terlahi's comment about the existing law, it does provide guidance. And in the existing law, it defines caregiver and the term substantiate and unsubstantiated cases. It really becomes difficult to substantiate a case and forward it to the Office of the Attorney General when the caregiver is the one who is suspected of abusing the individual. I'm saying individual because it could be an elderly, 60 years old and above, and in the language, an adult. And so it does become difficult. But we manage, Senator Titano.
Okay. So with that being said, I wanted to look at a couple of the definitions and then move on to some other issues. With the definition of disability, perhaps, like if this bill goes forward, perhaps you could give me your input on whether you think that it needs to be a physical or mental limitation that is verified by some sort of certified authority, or if you think it stands strongly enough on its own as written. It's on page 3, sorry. At the top of the page.
So if you take this and you measure it like this, is your disabled or not, and this is the one that is the big no, this has its own section, its definition, because it's.
Yes. So whether they feel it needs to be a situation that's verified. Yeah. So with the definitions that you're used to working with, do they stand along these lines, or do they need to be verified by a certified authority? Is that an important thing to have in the definition there, would you say?
Well, the current definition of Public Law 31278 actually has worked for the Bureau of Adult Protective Services in cases in which the investigating social worker is uncertain whether the person may be a person who is with mental illness. They would collaborate with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center to verify the status of that person. The current adult with a disability definition is someone who's 18 or older, has a physical or mental impairment which substantially limits one or more major life activities. And the second part is having a history or has been classified as having an impairment, which again limits one or more major life activities. The proposed bill goes on to list more specifics, qualifications, classifications, mental incapacitation due to a developmental disability, organic brain damage, or mental illness. But I think the current provision, if we could work and refine
together.
it to perhaps work with the proposed bill 13-35 definition and come out with one that I guess merges both in concept, that would work for us.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just Maasi for that. And then looking at some of the language in here where it's talking about willfully and culpable negligence, I would just ask whether that needs to be within the definitions, or maybe it's there and somehow I'm not seeing it at this time, but I would think that that would be important. I'm sure that there are legal definitions, but perhaps to have those reiterated if they're not present in the bill. And I'm glad that you brought forward the point about awareness campaigns. I see that this is something that is really important, that regardless of whether the bill goes through, that I see the need for awareness campaigns like we've seen for other issues. But certainly if this bill goes forward, because of the expansion of definitions and situations and the potential issues that are related to it, where one might find oneself having to face some legal charges, that awareness campaigns and trainings would be a really important component of this going forward. Are there trainings that take place at this point in time for caregivers? Is there any system of trainings in place? Is that something that would be important to start including, would you say?
Yes, Senator. I think that the training is really, especially education and awareness, that's really important, especially for these caregivers. Because sometimes they come in and just think, oh, all I have to do is be there. They don't know what it entails to be a caregiver. They don't know that, you need to look at your mom or your dad and see that you need to prepare food for them. You need to wash clothes for them. Those are things that they don't understand, and they don't know that it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort to do. So being a caregiver, it's not just being there and being in the house and just watching TV while you leave your mom and dad alone. Being caregiver, the word care is enough to tell you that you need to attend to that person. So yes, I agree that there should be training, a lot of training.
And I'm glad that you're bringing those points forward. Part of my training is as a cultural anthropologist, and so it just also brings to mind that we are such a diverse population. And I think in so many ways it really benefits us as a community, but I really see a lot of potential for that cultural diversity to actually come up as some issues in differences in understandings about how we care for the elderly, how we care for family members, and deal with those issues. So I think that could also be extremely important for our culturally diverse population to have some sort of training. And with that, with some of the penalties, I could see some real benefit with, instead of it perhaps going straight into some litigation, there being perhaps steps where there is required training put in place so that the situation is taken care of, hopefully, in that sort of manner, and doesn't reach the situation of having to be litigated or somebody being considered a felon. So I could see a lot of benefit to requiring steps of trainings before it gets to the next level of type of penalty. The last one that I would put in there, and again, I would defer to your expertise, but I see that there's also room for discussion of power relationships. So there's a lot of discussion in the bill about capacity for consent and failing to give consent, but I think when we're dealing with issues of abuse, no matter what they are, a lot of it can hinge upon power relationships, where it can be looking like it's giving consent even for a person who's fully mentally functional. And so I would defer to your comments on that and how you would perhaps work to craft something about power relationships and how that can be part of an abusive situation. Not necessarily now to put anybody on the spot, but just saying, you know, later. I think it would be important to have you weigh in on those types of potentials for abuse. So, and that's really all of my comments. So again, I appreciate you for the work that you do. It's incredibly important to our community, and I will move on to the next person.
Thank you, Senator Kelly Marsh-Taitino, and now Senator Telos Haidegui.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for being here today. And looking at your agency right now and the growing population, you know, the baby boomers are coming up. I'm in a generation where my parents, my father's 90 years old at this point, so it's a growing population. And to have such a small group, you know, like yours, I hope we can find some funding to help support your agency, and I really appreciate what you do. Caregiving is a very, very thankless job, sometimes and difficult. So moving forward on this bill, I'm hoping as well the good author of the bill too as well will be looking into the Attorney General's opinion on some of these languages, because some of the laws actually overlap in the existing law that I'm sure that will be looked into. But once again, this, like I said, it's a growing, an area that's growing, that even Tranquilidad is not even going to be enough to house some of our aging families, and that needs to be looked in. So just to let you know, I'll be coming to see you soon about expanding Tranquilidad or building a new facility. That being said, can you tell me, data is very important that backs up anything that we need to move forward to and justify. So how many reports of neglect have been reported to your office? Can you tell me that? And any other data that can affiliate with that?
Senator, we don't have the data with us this morning, but we can definitely provide it for you. The data that we do have on record actually is also contained in the 2018 annual APS report, and that's also filed on our website, but also filed with the Guam legislature. But we can definitely also provide you a copy of the information with regard to the top 3 forms of abuse for the last 5 years, which is contained in the report, and it'll give you the numbers of referrals for neglect.
Yeah, if that can be sent to the chairwoman.
Oh, of
that
course,
would be-
absolutely, we can do that.
She can disperse that information
All
to
right.
us. Is there any other type of data that's critical and important that we need to pay attention to in moving this forward, your agency forward? Other data, I guess the neglect is just one area that you take a consensus of? Nothing else? Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, most of the questions were, yes, go ahead.
Senator, from the data from the number one type of abuse from 2014 to 2018, so this, financial has actually been there 3 times within those 5 years. So financial abuse has been there in the top.
Oh, okay.
And so also neglect and emotional abuse.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Regis. I really appreciate it. So financial abuse and emotional. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Senator Munya?
Thank you very much. I don't really have any questions, but I just want to make a quick statement that in the forefront of this bill, it looks like, you know, there's absolutely no denying that we need to take care of our Manamku, and I think culturally here on Guam, we're just destined to that. You know, we all believe that we just have to take care of our Manamku. But I think really what this bill does, and I thank you for your insight and some of the specifics, because I think people tend to forget, you know, what really constitutes as abuse, or what they have become accustomed to, and not realizing that really they are abusing the Manamku. So if anything, as we're working on it in committee with the specifics by your recommendations, what it really is doing is bringing the awareness to the forefront. And I can't agree or disagree that everyone in the household should be liable. What I do agree with is that that specific caregiver that has taken on that role to take care of our Manamku should be the one to designate whoever it is that's going to take care of them in place of them, to know what they should and shouldn't do. I do also agree that there should be some level of training, because, like we said, sometimes we become so accustomed to caring for a certain person a certain way that we don't realize that that is considered abuse. And so if anything, I appreciate all of your insight. Thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront and allowing us to understand that from your perspective. And I thank the authors again for bringing this up so that we understand what constitutes as abuse, and for penalty, and what doesn't. Thank you.
Senator Munya, and thank you to the panel. Thank you very much. If there's no one else who wishes to testify on Bill 13-35, this concludes the public hearing for Bill 13-35. Thank you very much. We will now begin to hear testimony on the confirmation of Jane Flores to serve as Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. The Bureau of Women's Affairs was created by executive order in 1988 and codified into law in 1991 through Public Law 21-23, authored by Herminia Durking, Pilar Lujan, and Marilyn Manabusin. In the opening clause of the law, the author said, and I quote, "The legislature is committed to equal rights for women, as evidenced by the unprecedented number of women serving in key staff positions throughout the government, including those elected to the legislature. The Bureau has the following duties according to the statute. To A, formulate policies to eliminate gender discrimination throughout the government of Guam and the private sector. To study and make recommendations on issues of particular concern to women and on widening the access of persons of both genders to all positions and aspects of the community. C, to review and submit recommended legislation to the legislature addressing the gender inequities in current laws. D, to be responsible for closely monitoring issues and legislation regarding relating to gender discrimination and to advise the governor and the legislature of issues on such discrimination, along with proposed recommendations for actions, and E, to select representatives to attend national conventions and other forums where issues concerning gender discrimination are to be discussed and acted upon. And statute also states that the Bureau shall work with and assist the Director of Administration to ensure that the provisions of Section 4403 of Title IV of the Guam Code annotated pertaining to equal employment opportunity programs are properly administered and implemented. At this time, I would like to call up the individuals who have signed up to testify for Ms. Jane Flores, Olivia Elliott, Jolene Flores, and Lena Leon Guerrero. And Ms. Jane Flores, yes. Ms. Leon Guerrero, can you please state your name for the record and who you're representing today?
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. My name is Lena Leon Guerrero, and I'm here as the president of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Last Thursday, we had our first general membership meeting, and we touted how 2019 is off to such a wonderful start with our first Magahaga, a supermajority of women in the 35th Guam legislature, and strong, capable appointments to leadership throughout the government. So today, I'm here to support Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's appointment of Jane Flores as the director of the Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs. Jane is no stranger to our island community or to the region. We've read her work as a columnist for the PDN, Marianas Variety, Pacific Island Time, and Guahan Magazine. We've seen her and listened to her. Well, some of you are a little young, maybe you didn't really see her or listen to her, but she's an award-winning reporter, a producer for Guam Cable TV, and would later become the news director for Sorensen Television Systems. An excellent communicator and intelligent thinker, Jane has covered and can speak to a wide range of topics: politics, government, education, lifestyle, and culture. In addition, Jane has demonstrated a commitment to learning and professional development, a willingness to take on additional responsibilities throughout her career. She started as a reporter, eventually became a TV news director, started as a columnist, and later an editor-in-chief. She combined her technical skills with a love of our island culture in writing, producing, and directing Messiah Gifino Tomorrow. She taught English at the college level to raise the caliber of writing and communications among Guam college students. That led her to directing communications and promotions at GCC. Now Jane is prepared to step forward, to step up, and accept the responsibility for leading the Bureau of Women's Affairs. She'll bring with her a wealth of experience and knowledge to her new role, with intelligence and a clear ability to lead. She can speak to issues and recommend policy to eliminate discrimination and facilitate equal participation of women and men in our community. On behalf of the Women's Chamber, we look forward to Jane Flores being confirmed as director of the Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leon Guerrero. And Ms. Flores?
Hafaday, Senator Shelton, and esteemed members of the Committee on Higher Education and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens. It is an honor to come before you this morning, not only to ask for your blessing on my appointment by Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, our Magahaga, to revive the Bureau of Women's Affairs, but also to seek your input with regard to several initiatives on which I am currently working. First things first, though. I came to Guam from Illinois in 1984 to work as a reporter for the former Guam Cable TV. I've been here ever since, as we like to say. Guam is my home. My wonderful husband is Chamorro, my 3 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, and my grandson are Chamorro. Over the past 34, going on 35 years, I have grown to love this island and care about our people, our environment, and the perpetuation of the Chamorro culture. I have tried to use my voice as a journalist to raise awareness of issues affecting us. I've served on parent-teacher organizations in the Catholic Church and taught college English classes as an adjunct professor while working at GCC. I am not an expert on women's issues, but having had 3 daughters and my prior experience in the community, I am very familiar with the range of issues facing women on this island. I know where to look for information and for money. My individual meetings and conversations with many of you have produced fruitful suggestions about 3 initiatives that I would like to launch to get the Bureau of Women's Affairs up and moving. First, a sexual assault and domestic violence awareness campaign aimed at young men across all cultures that not only points out the social ramifications of assaulting a person, whether that person is male, female, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or questioning, but also the economic ramifications for the perpetrator as well. In the past, sexual assault awareness campaigns have been focused on just that, just awareness. I believe that now is the time to focus these campaigns toward the young men on our island and the young men who come to our island from other islands so that we can start the movement to make any type of assault simply not culturally or socially acceptable. Next, Project Sotera, and I have to credit Rita Nauta from Guampedia for naming this initiative. This will make feminine hygiene products available to girls and women so that they don't have to miss school or work days due to not having these necessary products. This initiative will allow these students and employees to continue learning and functioning during their menstrual cycle. I'm working with GDOE to develop a survey that will be adapted for our Department of Public Health and Social Services and other government agencies and nonprofits to discern the estimated number of women on our island that are affected by what is called period poverty. We can tap into both global and local nonprofit organizations and island businesses to help women be all that they can be every day of the month. Also, a campaign to get businesses and nonprofit organizations to sponsor someone who just needs to get their high school equivalency so that they can get a job or go to college. This initiative is in line with Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's call in her inaugural address for our government to partner with businesses and nonprofit groups to support families in need. Because as she noted, and as all of us note, government cannot do everything. This initiative will allow businesses to make just a small investment in a person, an investment that can give someone the hope and confidence that they need to get a job that perhaps helps them to become financially independent, go to college, to turn their life around, become a great employee. I'm working with GCC, where I spent the last 9.5 years, to get this initiative off the ground in conversations with officials from Sanctuary and Oasis, DYA, and other agencies. They tell me that sometimes the price of getting your high school equivalency, which is either $125 or $85, depending on which company the person chooses to go with, is a bit prohibitive. This initiative can help people gain the confidence that they may need to transform their life and become a productive member of our community. I realize that a range of other issues need to be addressed: teen suicide, equal pay for all regardless of gender, legislation that helps advance the marginalized members of our community, and more. As the Bureau of Women's Affairs gets established and secures grant funding, I assure you that these issues will be addressed. When Governor Leon Guerrero approached me about taking on the challenge of reviving the Bureau of Women's Affairs, I was honored to have been asked to serve. A few weeks before she approached me, I was elected to the board of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, an organization run by a group of amazing women whose purpose is to advance the role of women in our community. I believe that my life's journey has brought me to this point, and I hope to be able to make a positive difference in the lives of others through my work as the Bureau of Women's Affairs Director. Sijus Masi for your time and for your consideration, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Jane, and I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions. Senator Terlahi?
No questions, but I welcome your vision for the Bureau and your enthusiasm to vitalize that. And I'm glad because I think we do need to focus on girls and young women and make sure that they have what they need in order to begin work, to succeed in school. And by doing that, we are going to help them throughout their lives. So I welcome and I recognize your years of experience on Guam. And so I have no doubt that what Ms. Leonguerra says and what the governor believes in is correct, that you are in touch with the community and you're going to be able to help us where the help is needed. For your service.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Perez?
Buenas.
Buenas.
And thank you for your testimony. I do look forward to the work that you, the priorities that you've set out to do. And I just also, in our conversation, I would also like to suggest that if there could be some sort of analysis regarding more of the indigenous perspective and how that applies to the policies and practices going forward. And so I do look forward to the work that you have set out to do. Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely.
Thank you. Senator Chaitigui?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for stepping up. As you know, we had a great conversation in my office when you came to visit me, and appreciate, spending time with me to actually share my experience as once upon a time I was the director of the Women's Bureau. And I read your testimony here, and I'm glad to see your daughters here. And I like your testimony, by the way. I was able to read it and thoroughly enjoyed it. I noticed that the three, it's very aggressive, your initiatives, the three that you've stated here in your testimony. But and you know that a lot of it has to do with trying to find funding for this. Yes. And the ability to do that. So if there's anything that allows some way to fund your office, that's the best route to go. And I mentioned to you about the Department of Labor because the Women's Bureau in the U.S. is housed under the Department of Labor. And they can provide a wealth of support there for you, especially pursuing women in non-traditional jobs would be helpful. Also, we talked about working with the other neighboring islands. Guam we have cracked the glass ceiling, almost broken it, but there's still a lot of work in the outer islands that need our help and our assistance. So I hope you can continue to keep a dialogue with the other neighboring islands as well. But Jane, you had me at hello, so you have my full support as the director of the Women's Bureau. I know you're going to take this to heights that I never had the opportunity to do, and I know you can do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. And I have been in touch with Department of Labor Director Dave Della Sola about some initiatives. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chaitigui. Senator Castro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you for accepting the appointment. I think the last person I've known, except for your testimony or your commentary earlier, Senator, was my first cousin, Doris Crisostomo, and she was always a strong woman and exemplified love for family and the community. I've always known you to be a consummate professional. I've always known you to be very serious, and your resume evidences someone who's a truth seeker, being that you're an award winner, so thank you for that. But two things I want to highlight that I think are unique. First is the fact that you came here with a set of priorities, and the second is that you educated me about something. You sensitized me to something I wasn't aware of, this concept, this phenomenon known as period poverty. Thank you for taking that extra step to look at a marginalized segment of our population. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have
3 daughters too.
3 daughters of my own, and so I must thank their mother and the entire family for helping me to make that, to make it work for them. But I guess my point would be, these are the things I took for granted, and I thank you. Thank you so much for your advocacy. The second issue would be on the issue of this marginalized population, any marginalized demographic of this territory. And so, as a fellow educator, I too see the advantages and the critical need for even the basic education in order for them to progress in life. And so, Godspeed to you. You have my support, Jean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Castro. Senator Muñoz?
I can't help but feel like I get a little sparkle in my eye when I look at you. I don't know if that's a former media colleague feeling that I get, but you know, when you watch somebody growing up on TV, you just have that little starstruck feeling. So I still get that when I look at you. But I also feel like our paths somehow just keep crossing, and so I just feel like I'm guided by a wonderful woman, just continuously crossing our paths with the media, and then also, you know, you leading a school that I went to where I kind of grew up. All of my my pubescent years were spent at GCC as well, and now here in this realm of public service. So I thank you so much for stepping up to the plate, and maybe suggestion as we are considering the young ladies who are entering into those pubescent years, maybe even consider a support group for the ladies who are getting out of it, you know? I mean, I think that's also a very important part of our lives that we have to understand to women who are actually headed into premenopause or menopausal situations. I think that's also a very important part of it. So if there's a support group, I'm sure that some of us on this panel here understand what that feels like, and maybe we can apply some of their life changes to some people who are learning about it as well. So something to consider. You know, the women who are entering into their more senior years. But other than that, I just want to thank you for all of your ideas, and we look forward to working with you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senators.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you very much, Jane, and congratulations to you on your appointment and for accepting. You have a big task ahead of you with renewing the initiatives of the Women's Bureau, and I'm very glad to hear of all of your goals, very lofty goals, and we've discussed many of them already, and I have confidence in you and your ability to do that. So again, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with you and all of the members of the 35th Legislature. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for your testimony. If there are no other questions, this will conclude the confirmation hearing for Jane Flores to serve as Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. We will now begin to hear testimony on the confirmation of Melanie W. Brennan to serve as Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. The Department of Youth Affairs was created in 1978 by Public Law 14-110, authored by Senator Edward R. Duenas. According to the law, the purpose of the Department of Youth Affairs is to plan, coordinate, and/or implement programs, services, and activities geared toward youth development, rehabilitation, and involvement in the community. The duties of the department, as enumerated in statute, are to formulate plans and policies, develop a comprehensive approach, coordinate and/or implement programs and services to enable the youth to develop his or her full potential and skills, talent, leadership, ability, good sportsmanship, and citizenship, provide youth services and programs to all districts of Guam, encourage through direct or indirect means all youths, especially those in need of guidance and motivation, to make use of existing youth facilities, services, and programs, establish a comprehensive approach to providing services and programs to youth, taking into consideration the coordination and consolidation of existing programs and services, and planning with implementing new programs and services where deemed necessary. Make such referrals as are necessary when certain services are best provided by other agencies within the government of Guam or by other resources within the community or abroad. Provide assistance and cooperation to youth and community groups, both organized and unorganized, which provide or sponsor programs and/or services beneficial to the youth. Collect and disseminate information and research data relative to youth needs and problems, and keep the governor, the judges of the courts of Guam, the Guam legislature, the district commissioners, and the general public informed on all major youth developments and achievements, and have general purview of youth activities within the territory of Guam. At this time, I would like to call up all those individuals who have signed up to testify. Ms. Melanie Brennan, Mr. Willie Brennan, Mr. Michael, Miss Phillips, okay. Mr. Paul Suba, okay. Mr. David Afeisen, Ms. Christinda Uggan, okay. Mr. Willie Brennan, would you like to begin?
Good morning, Senators.
Good morning.
Let me first begin by thanking everybody here for being present, my extended family, my friends, and Senators. Guau si Willie Brennan, yes, guau si Lani Brennan. We have been married for 30 years. We have 6 children, 2 boys, 4 girls, and 4 beautiful grandchildren. Lani, as we all call her, is a loving mother and grandmother. Together, we have raised them to be the best they can be to pursue their dreams and to be engaged members of our family and community. We like to think they are a reflection of our values, and Lani certainly embodies all these attributes. We live in Chalampago, surrounded by extended family. Chalampago has been a family home for many years, and we have many family relatives living there. Lani's proud parents are Francisco and Dolly Williams of Santa Rita, Familia Ngozu, Kotla. Frank retired from the Port Authority as Chief of Police and the United States Navy. Dorothy is a retired school teacher from Department of Education. She has 3 brothers, John, who is deceased, Victor, who works for United Airlines, and Francis, who lives in the mainland. 2 sisters, Polly, who is also an educator, and Ginny, also an employee of the Judiciary of Guam. Lani's extensive experience in the government brings a wealth of knowledge in law enforcement and various innovative treatments tried and tested to prevent recidivism in the penal system. Having worked in the judiciary, Lani has been fortunate enough to attain numerous off-island trainings and conferences designed to find new ways to treat incarcerated individuals and return them to the community as outstanding contributing members. Many of these have been targeted at juvenile behavior, and she will bring this knowledge and experience to the Department of Youth Affairs. Lani has retired from the government of Guam, with her final position being Chief of Probation at the Judiciary. Together with the vast experience she brings to the table, her managerial expertise, training, the large probation department will leave her in good stead to manage DYA and begin the process of returning those children back to their parents and to their communities. I have no doubt the DYA, the administration, and the people of Guam will greatly benefit from her there. As her husband, I ask for your support, and as a member of this community, I recommend that she be confirmed as the Director of Youth Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Michael Phillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Senators, committee members. I've known Lani now for almost 50 years, so I guess a little bit longer than Willie. And we're also from the same village, Santa Rita, and with that time span, most of you know that when you say you're from the same village, that's during a time when that meant something. You can be neighbors now and from the same village, and that doesn't necessarily mean what it meant before, but known Lani for almost 50 years. We're from the same village, and we're from the same school, Mount Carmel, from way, way back. We actually graduated together at the University of Hawaii. So with that having been said, I know her very, very well. In our professional careers, we're generally in the same area, but kind of on opposite sides. I was representing criminal defendants, and she was representing victims and alleged victims. And you know, there was always communication. Anytime either one of us wanted it, we were free to talk to the other about everything, ranging from cases to philosophy to solutions and plans and things like that. Kind of where she is now. And so she moves from CPS to probation. And again, in my career, it's kind of, you know, not the opposite, but definitely a field where it's not the best relationship because when you're a defense attorney and your clients are being handled by probation, it's not always a nice ending or a nice procedure. But Lonnie was always more than amicable and always let me know if you need something, Mike, just call. And always knew I could do that. In my 30 years, I probably did that maybe twice. But it was always knowing that if I needed to, I could call Lonnie, and she was very responsive, always had all the answers, knew her job very, very well. So I wasn't surprised, although I didn't know what was happening, I wasn't surprised that she was going to ascend to the highest position, as I call it there at the court in her field, only now to go to DYA. But I feel very, very confident that she'll do just as well, if not better there, because now it brings another side of Lonnie, the side that Willie described. And although I think she did great in law enforcement, I think now adding that maybe not completely a motherly part of her, but definitely the different dimension that she brings to the table will now kind of be at the forefront of DYA, I think she'll do an excellent job. I do want to say, and I promise to end with this, just one brief example. Mr. Atta, Peter Alexis Atta, is here in the hall. And he's a perfect example because people can just do their job and then people can do their job. And one day, he reached out because he saw a child that didn't belong at DYA. And he could have just gone home and that child could have just spent the night at DYA, probably spent a week there. But he inquired and he intervened and said that this child does not belong here. And so to make a long story short, that child ended up going up there. He was taken care of. He ended up being my foster child. And without Mr. Atta, that would not have happened. And without Mr. Atta, he can name the children that he's been involved with me as an attorney or for any other reason. And if they're anywhere here, he'll say, hey, Mike, so-and-so's right there. And of course, I don't exactly remember everybody's name at my age, although others do, and they'll say, Mike, don't you remember? It's his case. Oh, yeah. He remembers every single one of them, and he follows them all the way through. And I think that's the type of person that Lonnie will be, and that's the difference at DYA from quote-unquote law enforcement and maybe DOC. And I think you have a great director in Lonnie. You've had a great administrator there in different positions with Mr. Atta. And I just don't, feel it's appropriate for me to testify in favor of Lonnie without bringing out that one example of Mr. Atta, who really, in my opinion, he may have saved a child's life because who knows what would have happened. But he did everything he could to protect that child. And that's just an ordinary day for Mr. Atta. I never knew that side of him. And I think there's a lot of people that may not know that side of Lonnie because of her career. I mean, she's serious. All joking aside, I asked her, is she practiced carrying a gun? Because she does that stuff. That's what she does in her career. And she did it very, very well. And all the years I've known Lonnie, everything she's done very, very well. And I'm sure she'll do a very good job. So unless you have any questions, I just want to make sure that, I have you have my unconditional support and encouragement. And I hope you do confirm her.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. And Mr. Paul Suba?
Good morning, Madam Chair, distinguished senators and guests, and of course the appointee. I can't agree with Attorney Phillips more. I believe that in my personal and professional workings and dealings with Ms. Melanie Brennan, that she has a passion for what she does. She has a passion not only for the mission, but the employees and the clients as well. And I think that in our conversations, she has proven, at least in my opinion, to have recognized that the need is really at the forefront of the entire criminal justice system, dealing with our children and our youth. And I have to say, on a personal note, it's obvious she has done well with her own family and has a lot of support from not only them, but I've seen even their friends that come into the family relationship. I believe, and I'm going to make it short because there's others that would like to speak, and I think you have a pretty good idea already from her background that you may have reviewed. that she is unique to this particular position because of what Attorney Phillips has stated. She has the experience in dealing with the adults and the court system and all the issues and things that needed to be addressed at that end. But now she appears to want to move into the direction where the real challenge is to help our youth get from a place that they need to be. All of us as adults, all of us as parents and people in the community, that's really our role, is to help the younger generation, whether they've made mistakes or have challenges, to get to a place where they'll be better and walk away from institutions or places such as Department of Youth Affairs. So I want to congratulate Mrs. Brennan on all the accomplishments she's made, because I believe they have been the stepping stones to bring her to where she is today. And with your support and confirmation, I believe she's going to do an excellent job in improving and making strides that have already been done, but she can build upon those, and I know she'll develop, because of her passion, even more activities and things that the youth can take to heart so that they can move on with their lives. So I want to thank you again, and I truly do support her confirmation.
Situus Masi and Mr. David Afison from DYA.
Buenos dias, Madam Chair, Senators, family and friends. Just want to say for allowing me the opportunity. I know we have a lot of our actual support low. Thank you for granting me this opportunity to reinforce our confirmation of Mrs. Brennan. For over 5 years, I had this opportunity to work with Mrs. Brennan. It has been vital in resolving issues with the same population that we have with our same clientele, our mutual clientele across the board, from the judicial side across to the executive branch. And her work ethic and her performance is obviously quite ethical and very commendable. She has been above the pace, and her foresight to assist and improve overall management with DYA at operations at a higher level. We have great directors, and she's ready to pick up the ball and move it across the board to continue to improve services directly, not only for our clients, but as well as for the staff and officers within our department. This solidifies her approach on a team concept overall in regards to sincere and positive approach overall. She has been demonstrating her intent to not only gather information from her level to identify the issues or even the conflicts with our budget constraints, down to the direct inquiries of the service provisions that were rendered and can be improved to be more efficient, but it's more so to incorporate an approach that further looks into the need to be proactive in preventing violations or behaviors that can be resolved from the ground up. Mrs. Brennan is and will be a tremendous asset to our department. And this is displayed, the drive that faces the challenges heads on, and she identifies the problem-solving approaches that will tremendously benefit our overall department. So, Senators, I sincerely ask for your altruistic decision to support her confirmation for our department.
Thank you very much. Yes, can you please state your name for the record?
Good morning, Senator. My name is Corinne Tarrant Bendicho. Buenas and Hafade, Senator Shelton, and esteemed senators. Thank you for the opportunity to submit my testimony in support of the confirmation of Mrs. Melanie Brennan to serve as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. My name is Corinne Tarrant Bendicho, and I am the Acting Youth Development Administrator at the Department of Youth Affairs. I have been employed with the government of Guam for over 26 years. The first four of those years as a social worker at the Department of Health and Social Services, Public Health and Social Services, while the remaining 22 plus of those years have been spent working through the ranks at DYA, where I plan to one day retire, doing what I love most, which is helping our island youth and their families to make a better life for themselves and their future. I first came to know of Lonnie, as she is fondly known as, early on in my career as a CPS social worker, when I collaborate with the Superior Court of Guam, where she worked as a senior juvenile probation officer. Through the years, we've crossed paths professionally, during different junctures in our respective careers and have always acknowledged and respected one another as fellow colleagues, although she's just a couple of years senior to me, professionally speaking, of course. I was not surprised to learn that Lonnie recently retired as Chief Probation Officer after working her way up through the ranks and successfully fulfilling 35 years of government service to our island. I truly admire this accomplishment and take pride in the fact that she is a woman. I now have another role model to look up to. This past holiday season, I must admit that my anxiety level was very high, as I heard several different rumors as to who may be appointed to be our new director. I finally learned from a very reliable source, who happened to be my younger sister, that it was going to be Mrs. Melanie Brennan. I make mention of this only because my younger sister's boss at that time was Mrs. Brennan. The first words from my sister were, "The court's loss will definitely be DYA's gain." My sister went on to tell me only positive attributes about Mrs. Brennan, such as the fact that she is optimistic and supportive of her employees, highly compassionate and knowledgeable of her job, and is very open-minded when faced with conflicts and dilemmas. My sister went on to explain that in her experience of working directly under Mrs. Brennan's leadership, Mrs. Brennan makes and takes the time to listen to every side of a story to assist her to make sound and compromising decisions in the best interest of all involved. While the conversation that evening with my sister certainly eased my mind and made me less anxious about DYA's future, I was just more relieved and happy that it was going to be someone I knew and already respected, someone I knew was experienced and would take the duties of DYA director seriously and to heart. Since after all, I've worked really hard in my capacity and additional duties as one of DYA's grant writers to improve its physical infrastructure and, most importantly, the public's perception of DYA that is more rehabilitative and treatment-oriented and not punitive as it was historically perceived to be. I certainly did not want a new director that was going to hinder further progress in this regard. Although it has only been a month since Mrs. Brennan has been at DYA, and since I've had the opportunity to work directly with her, I've observed firsthand her professionalism and genuine interest in trying to quickly ascertain the issues that the department continues to be challenged with. I love her optimism and respect her tenacity in working through the department's list of priorities. While there is certainly much more work to be done at DYA, I am highly confident that with Mrs. Brennan at the helm, her expertise and understanding of our needs will ensure consistency and continuity so we may continue to carry out the mandate of providing prevention and youth development activities, as well as 24-hour care and custody, rehabilitation, and treatment services to the island's youth and community. I believe that Mrs. Brennan fully understands that DYA's presence within the community via its resource centers increases concentration on preventive-type programs with less emphasis and focus on incarceration, which is definitely consistent and in line with the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 2018. It is my professional opinion that Mrs. Brennan will lead us in the right direction, and therefore respectfully request for this legislative body to swiftly confirm the appointment of Mrs. Melanie Brennan as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buendicho. And any of my colleagues have questions for this panel? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Christinda Uggan.
I wanted to make sure I get in there. I got you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Senator Amanda Shelton, and good morning as well to all the distinguished senators here of this committee. My name is Christinda Uggan, and I am the Deputy Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. I am here to testify in support of the nomination of Mrs. Melanie Brennan to the position as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. I may not have been privileged enough to work with Mrs. Brennan, as others may have, in her many years of government service. However, in the last few weeks, I have learned a great deal of her innate ability to lead. I have realized the vast amount of knowledge and skills she brings in regards to youth, the judicial system, and the ability to provide direction for issues concerning them and their families. Additionally, her understanding and experience of and with juvenile justice reforms, community-wide programs for at-risk youth, as well as her commitment to understanding and providing possible solutions or direction to overcoming societal issues are both commendable and inspiring. I have seen firsthand the energy, focus, and dedication to our department. Her tenacity towards understanding our needs and deficiencies as a department has left me with a feeling of total care and consideration. As her deputy, our conversations and decisions have been based on transparency, mutuality, and the desire to improve the quality and quantity of our workforce at the Department of Youth Affairs. I am excited to preserve this humbling opportunity to work alongside Mrs. Brennan and encourage you to confirm her nomination as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. I have not only witnessed her genuine commitment to both the youth in our care and the employees we serve, I too have seen her capacity to inspire, lead, and improve our department. Mrs. Brennan may be tiny and small-statured, but her abilities and capacity far outweigh what is obvious. There is definitely a pack to the punch, and I can only hope that I get the privilege of working with her for years to come, because at this point in time, it is already an honor. Thank you for your time and kind consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Uggan. Any of my colleagues have any questions for this panel? No. There's still more to testify. Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair. I have a very important meeting that I have to tend to, but I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for stepping up to the plate. I have to leave right now, but I really appreciate it. I've known you for quite some time. I definitely know your sisters back there, and they're great supporters because that's what you're going to need in this job. And I know that, get ready, Michael, because you're going to start receiving a little bit more foster kids in that area. And thank you to Mr. Atta for all the good work that you've done at DYA. And congratulations, you have my support.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to call up Mr. Peter Alexis Atta, Senator Frank Ishizaki, Tricia Suzuki, Robinette Balahaja, William Brennan,
I apologize, Senator. I have to get back to court at 11, and I would normally defer to the former senator, but could I give my testimony now?
Sure, sure, that's fine.
Thank you, Senator. Hoffaday Chairperson Shelton and members of the Committee on Higher Education and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens. My name is William Bucky Brennan, and I offer this testimony in support of Melanie Brennan to serve as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. I've known Melanie for about 30 years now, and I think at this point it's probably good to mention that I'm her son. And I anticipate you expect that I'll come up here and ask you to support my mother's appointment for that reason only, but that's only part of what I'd like to get through today. My 4 sisters, my older brother, my 3 nieces, my nephew, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles who are present, and close friends of the family all hope you'll support our mom, our grandma, because she's the best mother and grandmother any of us could have ever asked for. But again, I assume you know that's her family's position. Instead, as her son, I'd like to testify to my perspective on her career, to show you and to persuade you why I believe she's immensely qualified and the right choice to lead the Department of Youth Affairs. I hope to show you that in addition to being the strongest pillar of our family, she's also dedicated her life to her 7th child, service. I've never known Mom to crave the spotlight. In fact, I think my siblings and I can all attest that she thrives and is at her best when she is supporting and lifting up others, because that's what she's done all our lives. When I was born in 1988, Mom was about to begin her 3rd year as a social worker at Child Protective Services. And before CPS, she also had a brief stint as a teacher. Mom occasionally talks to me about her time at CPS and how she worked with children and families in very difficult and depressing circumstances. But to this day, she speaks, and I can tell that she's proud, and she was proud to help people, and particularly children, in really tough times. She left CPS in 1991 and was hired at the Superior Court of Guam with a cadre of probation officers that had experience in social work and case management. And that was my understanding of Mom growing up. She worked at probation. She was law enforcement. She worked at the court. And looking back, I freely admit that was a very naive understanding. The Probation Services Division was, and to this day remains, a high-stress and very high-demand work environment. Yet, quietly and diligently, Mom kept her head down and kept working day in and day out. The job never followed her home. If she had a particularly busy day or challenging case that she was working on, we never knew. I remember when we were young, Mom would help me and my sisters with our homework while simultaneously looking at our old computer. I used to think she was playing solitaire or some other game, but then in 2002, we were brought to a ceremony at the University of Guam where she received her master's degree in public administration. All the while, in addition to school, she was rising through the ranks at the Probation Services Division. In 1991, she was a young probation officer, and on January 18, 2019, she retired as the chief, the head of the division. During that time span, paradigms in the criminal justice system shifted dramatically. Probation, as a mainly law enforcement entity, transitioned to focus on rehabilitation, and for certain types of crimes, even treatment. I remember calling the probation officer when I was growing up to speak with my mom, and as a teenager, I was so annoyed because her phone number was always changing. It was not until I was older that I found out that Mom was being transferred from unit to unit within the division. In fact, at the end of her tenure, she has either worked or been the supervisor for every unit in the Probation and Services Division, in addition to her tenure as Deputy Chief and Chief Probation Officer. I know none of this from my mother, however. She never bragged about the various positions she held. She never let us know the stress or the struggles she faced every day. Instead, she kept her head down, facing whatever task was thrown her way without seeking recognition. Because of her over 30 years of experience, if you are looking for someone who understands the local criminal justice system's transition from a punitive system to the modern therapeutic and rehabilitative iteration, then you need look no further than Mom. Quite literally, from behind the scenes, inconspicuously, but diligently and purposefully, she helped write the book on therapeutic and treatment programs at the court, and she worked on different reform efforts that have been advanced over the years in Guam. This is how I know my mom. She's very quiet and thoughtful in her work. She does not seek accolades or recognition. This quiet, deliberative, unrelenting work ethic is what I admire most about her. Even at the peak of her career, she never sought the spotlight or the recognition she most assuredly deserves. She commands a wealth of knowledge of juvenile justice reform efforts, evidence-based and other best practices being implemented at the court as part of a greater movement toward criminal justice reform nationwide. I beam with pride when I sit and listen to Mom talk about the efforts she and others have made to implement these reforms and other evidence-based practices to reduce recidivism and ultimately to make our community safer. Her passion and lifelong dedication to service are evident anytime she discusses how far things have come and the work of so many great people to get Guam's criminal justice system to where it is today. But one thing she continues to impress on me in all of our discussion is that the work is not done. Selfishly, I was very excited mid-last year when, after years of encouragement from our family, Mom started to think seriously about retirement. Our family thought she'd finally get some rest. Over 30 years of government service meant she could relax. She deserved to decide what the next phase in her life was going to be and to do as she pleased. So she decided 2019 was the year, and since then, our conversations have been about what her plans are. She kept telling me that she didn't want to retire, she wanted to do something. She often spoke excitedly about potentially being a small business owner. But then I remember in January, my mom asked me what I thought of her working at DYA. I just said, "Mom, why?" you're about to retire. And her response was simply, why not? Over the next several days, she and I went back and forth discussing the pros and cons, what it would mean for the family if she kept working, what it would mean for staff at probation if she left, what it would mean to the DYA's employees, and to the children and families who engage the services of the department. Then Mom said something to me that demonstrates why she's the right person for this position. She said, Buck, we've worked so hard on so many programs at the court. Probation is ready. The officers have been trained, we've implemented, and the court understands the different evidence-based practices and how to accomplish the goals we've set. The next step is to re-engage the stakeholders, like the Department of Youth Affairs, to continue the progress. How humbling that after 30 years of service, she's still thinking of how to continue serving our community. She's still thinking about how our community can benefit from juvenile justice reform efforts and how stakeholder groups can tap into that progress. She still has the passion to serve. She commands an incomparable wealth of knowledge of juvenile justice reform and other initiatives in the local and national criminal justice system, and she brings that over 30 years of experience. In closing, I would just like to say I am unabashedly proud of my mother. Her professional accomplishments demonstrate that she's a lifelong public servant who has worked tirelessly to improve the lives of others for the benefit of our community. Her family supports her and her appointment to the Department of Youth Affairs. We're willing to share her with the community for a while longer because we know her love and dedication of service. So for all these reasons, I humbly ask you to support Melanie Brennan's appointment to be the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs so our community can continue to benefit from all she has to offer. Sidusmasi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Atta?
While the gentleman was talking, I leaned over at Melanie and I said, "Is that your brother-in-law or your son?" And she said, "That's my son." Wow. He said it all. You know, as a retiree, I normally, or whenever I come to the legislature, I would normally come with a prepared written statement. But when you're retired, you have no time to write, because I'm out in the yard not bush cutting, lawn mowing, pulling weeds, and doing everything. I'm enjoying retirement. Anyway, but when I heard that Melanie was being appointed as the director of DYA, I said to myself, excellent choice, excellent. And why do I say that? Because I have known Melanie in two of my professions, one at public health when she served as CPS. And man, I tell you, that's not easy. I don't know whether Melanie has ever taken any kids home because she couldn't find a place for them. But then I had the opportunity to work very closely with Melanie, again, at the Department of Youth Affairs. And what distinct incident happened was when we had a meeting with the Department of Education about the kids. And it was at that point that Melanie said, let's look at other options to save these kids. And it really bothered us when we have to put a 7th grader behind bars. It really bothers us at DYA. And so with that incident, and several others, even I can recall of one 6th grader that was in DYA. We came up with a solution, and that was going back, and I'm going to give credit to where credit is due, to Gloria Nelson. She had a program called Opportunity Room in the schools. And we worked on that with Melanie's support. We have not, in the time that I was at DYA, I think we only had about 2 kids that was brought in, and that's because they had previous cases. But other than that, they were put in the opportunity room at school. It is very, very hard. It pains the families. You heard Attorney Michael Phillips talk about the incident that happened about children who really did not belong at DYA. And I don't know whether they're still there, but I say at this point there are at least 7 kids when I left on January 4th. There are 7 kids that are there that really don't belong there. So we should be looking at opportunities such as Boys Town. We can apply that concept so that it can become a co-ed. We had the opportunity to bring the cottage home closer. And with Melanie's background and the Juvenile Reform Act, it has really helped the Department of Youth Affairs. And so, Senators, I come before you freely in full support of the nomination of Melanie Brennan to serve as the Director of Youth Affairs, Department of Youth Affairs. She will be able to bring that department to where it really belongs. She is currently working on several things. The Juvenile Reform Act is very, very important, and I ask you for your support for her for her confirmation as the director. Thank you very much.
Seduas Masi, Mr. Atta, and I'd like to recognize Senator Clint Rigel. I'm sorry I failed to recognize him when he joined us during Ms. Flores' confirmation hearing. And now I'd like to recognize Ms. Robinette Balahaja.
Buenas and Hafa Honorable Amanda Shelton and Honorable Senators of the 35th Guam Legislature. I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity to advocate for Mrs. Melanie Brennan's appointment as the Director of Department of Youth Affairs. My name is Robinette Balahaja. I have been a social worker at the Department of Youth Affairs for almost 6 years and currently serving in an acting capacity as a social service supervisor. My first professional encounter with Mrs. Lonnie Brennan, although she may not recall, was during career day back when I was a student attending Notre Dame High School. Mrs. Lonnie Brennan's presentation about her career as a probation officer was so inspirational that I knew immediately that I wanted to be just like her. The career day assignment for all students was to interview one of the guest speakers from a prospective career field. I met with Mrs. Lonnie Brennan, and her interview only furthered my aspirations of becoming a probation officer. I was amazed by how genuinely passionate she was about her job. Her dedication and commitment to making a positive impact in other people's lives drew me in, and I was convinced that this was my career of choice. After high school, I attended the University of Guam and completed my degree in criminal justice. Although I did not become a probation officer, I attribute my true calling as a juvenile social worker at DYA to Mrs. Lonnie Brennan. I have known Mrs. Lonnie Brennan both personally and professionally for the past 20+ years. On a personal level, I've known Mrs. Lonnie Brennan as the mom of one of my best friends. As a parent and grandparent, she fosters a nurturing, family-oriented home environment. She's compassionate and empathetic towards the struggles that families endure when trying to raise a family that strives to be the best mother possible to her children. On a professional level, I developed a direct working relationship with Mrs. Lonnie Brennan during her time as the Chief of Probation at the Superior Court of Guam, where she exhibited great leadership. Mrs. Lonnie Brennan successfully collaborated with other departments to include DYA and was always very supportive towards our shared goals and objectives, an idea in which she passed on to her subordinate probation officers. Mrs. Lonnie Brennan's knowledge and experience gained from the probation office is a great asset to her role as the Director of Department of Youth Affairs. She's aware of the issues and challenges with the island's youth and the need for more services, program interventions, and community-based prevention programs. Since her appointment to DYA, she has expressed her appreciation towards the department's best efforts in maintaining all our services, programs, and the operation of Youth Correction Facility, despite the difficulties and challenges that the agency currently faces. Undoubtedly, Mrs. Lonnie Brennan's previous experience and extensive knowledge would bring fresh ideas to aid in planning and strategizing towards improvements to programs, services, and infrastructure, ensuring the continuity of existing programs and services, boost employee morale and performance, increase youth development, work towards promoting a more positive image of DYA to the public, and strengthening our ties with the Judiciary of Guam and other service partners. I fully support the appointment of Mrs. Melanie Brennan and humbly request that the 35th Guam Legislature consider her confirmation as the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. Situ Asmasi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Balahajia. Senator Ishizaki?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senators. Congratulations on your elections, by the way. And I think everything great about Lonnie has been stated already, so I'm not going to repeat that. I've submitted a letter to endorse her confirmation, and I want to congratulate the governor for a fine selection and hope that you will confirm. And I don't know Lonnie as well as her grandparents. Her grandparents were my mother's Nino and Nina, so there's a long history from the village I grew up in. And her father served in the Army with my Uncle Ben, and I don't know why I never got to know her in her early years, but I think she's a fine choice, and Senators, please confirm her nomination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on the confirmation of Mrs. Brennan? Okay. I'd also like to mention that we've received testimony in support of Mrs. Brennan from Mr. John A. Toole, Executive Director of the Robert F. Kennedy National Resource Center for Juvenile Justice, and support from Mr. Joseph E. Rivera, the Chief Financial Officer of Calvo's Enterprise, and Ms. Tricia T. Suzuki, all in support of your confirmation. And Mrs. Brennan, go ahead.
Good morning. Hafaday. Honorable Amanda Shelton, Chairwoman for the Committee on Higher Education Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens, and all senators. I want a copy of all of that so that when I'm having a bad day at DYA, I can listen to it. I thought that this would be so nerve-wracking, but to hear all of that, I stand on the shoulders of all these giants. They define who I am. I don't want to go over my background because you've heard, my son kind of told you what I do, but I did want you to know that I'm also empowered by the women, and I'm humbled by Governor Lou Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Josh Tenorio. I'm humbled by their trust and confidence in me. The fact that all three branches of government are now led by women. As a woman, I'm honored to serve beside them. I'm committed to the much needed change that has to occur and to further juvenile justice efforts at the Department of Youth Affairs. We need to improve youth and family outcomes. It cannot just be the youth, it has to be their families as well. This will ultimately enhance public safety. So you know that I have a degree in psychology. My son told you I got my master's. Yes, I joined the court in 1991, and instead of retiring, I decided to work with the new administration. My work as a social worker and later as a law enforcement officer taught me the balanced approach. One of advocacy and accountability towards any offender can be achieved in ways that can cause less harm than punitive measures alone, especially with at-risk youth. Yes, we must still hold youth offenders accountable for their delinquent actions, but we must also provide them with opportunities to be successful. Innovative programming that is developmentally informed, providing youth with foundations to cultivate educational, vocational, and social skills, mentoring and exposure to pro-social activities like sports, farming, music. These experiences can change the trajectory of delinquency. Since 2014, I have been part of the Judiciary of Guam's management team for juvenile justice reform. The overarching goal of all our efforts was to reduce recidivism through the implementation of evidence-based practices, programs, and strategies that properly assess risk and needs, provide for individualized case planning, cognitive behavioral interventions that change criminal thinking, and engage the entire family. These efforts can be applied to the youth who intersect with the Department of Youth Affairs. The work ahead will be challenging, and it won't happen overnight, but I have experienced and committed staff at DYA to help make these changes. I also know that no single agency can do it alone. It will take partnerships and collaboration. I have already reached out to other youth-serving agencies, cabinet members, and nonprofit organizations. Now I'm reaching out to you. Give me the opportunity to help change the trajectory of delinquency on island. I kind of cut it short because it was so long.
Okay. Sidious Masi, Mrs. Brennan, and now I'll give the opportunity to my colleagues to ask any questions. Senator Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And congratulations to Mrs. Brennan for your nomination. I know you have a lot of experience in this field, and I know you're very well versed on juvenile justice system reforms, as you mentioned, and some of the new practices, the evidence-based practices, risk assessments, and things of that nature that look to work on prevention measures and other measures to divert youth from getting into trouble, basically. I'd like to read a quote from this testimony from Mr. John Toole, the RFK National Resource Center for Juvenile Justice. He says, I humbly, quote, I humbly offer my conviction that Melanie Brennan stands among a small and distinguished group of the most passionate, caring, knowledgeable, and experienced leaders with whom I have worked during my career, end quote. Well, myself, having worked with you during my short stint at the Judiciary of Guam, I concur completely with that statement. So I'd just like to say congratulations on your nomination. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Rachel. Senator Terlahi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations, Lonnie, and thank you to all the family, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, and all the family who are here, and those who have testified. I really appreciate the testimony because it's very diverse and it shows a very deep experience and community involvement, and that's going to serve you well, obviously. I think you're very prepared for the job, but I also want to note, being a CPS worker is probably one of the hardest jobs on Guam. And so I'm very glad that you have that experience and that you are joining others in at DYA with that experience. That's great. And it's really going to lead the juvenile reform, which you have led. But you've got chiefs of police, our former chiefs of police, former senators here testifying on your behalf, community leaders and attorneys. And I think you were beginning at the court when I was also a beginning lawyer, and so I appreciate your career. You've led the justice reform, and I know in my capacity as chairperson of the justice, the courts and the Department of Law, that you have led this reform. You are in the trenches, writing, as they said, the policies and the procedures that we are going to use through our community and different agencies, and not just at the courts, to change the trajectory for these children. And I thank you for that. And you've nurtured along the way your professionalism, your colleagues, family, and your friendships. You've inspired careers. I think that's very notable. And you are taking on a challenge now that it seems you have prepared for all your life. It's really perfect fit. So I just want to encourage you to be bold. We have a very short time in these capacities, and so take this opportunity and go take it as far as you can, because to change the trajectory for the children of Guam, I think it does have to show that it is our priority. So make it show and make it bold, and whatever help you need, let us help you if we can help you. Otherwise, I think you're just very prepared. So just know that that's how we feel, and so go for it. Don't hold back, and really, you've got no one to answer to anymore except for the people of Guam, and there's no one to slow you down. So take everything you've known and just really be bold with it. I don't know, I just wanted to say that to you because I think it's very important this time. We have an opportunity, you have an excellent opportunity, and you've got an excellent background and excellent support to really get it done. So I very much appreciate your ability and your willingness to do this. So Zizus Masi.
Thank you so much. And yes, I will still want to work very closely with you.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Senator Perez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Buenas, Melanie, Brennan. This is my first time meeting you, and what a great introduction to hear the outpouring of sentiment and support on your behalf, and to hear all the work that you've done, the hard work that you've done. And I'm just very thankful that you agreed to step up to being director of DYA. I've been a teacher in the public school system for the past 9 years, so I understand the hardships that our youth face and their families as well. And I really I have a lot of hope in regards to your rehabilitative and preventive holistic approach. And whatever support that we can provide, I would definitely be there for you and for the agency, because I see that our youth are very valuable to us, and we need to provide all the support that they need to survive and thrive. So thank you again, and Sizuz Masi.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Taitano?
Hafaday. So it's my first time to meet you as well, and I agree with the sentiments. It was a wonderful introduction. Sidus Masi to all those that came out to provide the support. We know that it takes time and effort to get here, and it really shows something important when you take that time and commit yourselves to that. So some of the things that really stood out to me, all of the testimony is positive. They really speak to your years of experience, the institutional knowledge, and I think that those are such significant contributions in a role like this. As you well know, our youth have high rates of various issues that they're contending with, and it's so important. It was so heartwarming to me to hear about your approach and having many years of experience in that, of trying to find ways to get them onto these more productive paths, to be preventative. Not only is it important to them as individuals, but it's so important to all of us as a community. These are long-term impacts. Our youth are our future. They are going to be who are out there driving the community when, well, the rest of us get older. And so it's very good to hear of your approach, your experience, and all that you bring to the table. So I just want to add my thanks to the others and congratulations to taking on this role for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitano. Senator Castro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not my first time to meet you, Melanie, but I gotta say that whether it's at the Humantic Fiesta or meeting very briefly at the courts, you managed to be very consistent. You're educated, strong, but humble, compassionate, high energy, and well-networked. And I do want to say, Madam Chair, for the record, to that last point, you know you have a good director in front of us when people are messaging you at all times a day who have nothing to do with public policy. And I did promise this individual that I'll read his brief testimony in your support into the public record. This person's with a Harley chat group but managed to message me on this side, okay? Just so you know, for the record, his name is Ed Tovis, and he is the former Chief Marshal of the Judiciary of Guam. And I quote, "Good evening, Senator." And by the way, as an aside, it was well way past my bedtime, so I couldn't respond till 6 this morning. "Good evening, Senator. I know that Ms. Brennan is up for tomorrow for confirmation, and I'm texting in support of her confirmation for DYA Director. I've known her since 1989, and she has all the knowledge, education, as well as work experience as a Government of Guam manager to head DYA. Please support, period. If I could, I would be present tomorrow for her hearing. However, my business training and contracts prevent me. Please vote in favor of Lonnie Brennan as the new DYA Director. Thank you. Sincerely, Edward Tovis, Retired Marshal of the Courts Judiciary of Guam." And just so you know, I was able to respond this morning, and not only am I supporting your confirmation, I'm going to notify him in writing that I will be voting in support of the confirmation. But for me, Madam Chair, I think what gripped me the most, Director, is the fact that you delivered some remarks at a career day at your alma mater, a shared alma mater, with someone who's personally known to me. And the fact that you touched her life to the point where you affected what she ultimately grew up to be is testimony to what you could potentially do, not just for the department, but the youth of Guam. And I appreciate that. God bless you, Godspeed, and you have my support and my vote. I'll let Mr. Tovis know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Castro. Senator Muña?
Thank you so much. So as long as I've known you, you've always been Lonnie to me. So when the chief to the governor sent us a message stating her appointments, I saw the name Melanie Brennan, and I said, I wonder what her relation is to Lonnie. Because I've never known you as Melanie, but, well, now I know. So it's a more professional name, but it's okay. You will still always be Lonnie to me. I just want to acknowledge, I just can't help to ask you, is that your adorable grandbaby back there?
Yes.
It is?
Yes,
because
it is.
If that's strategy to get you confirmed, it's working with me. Because for some reason, I just can't take my attention off of her and how beautiful she is. So congratulations on not just your success in your professional career, but also your success in your personal career as a mom and grandmother. And also want to acknowledge some of the other testimony that was said about you earlier about the court's loss and the gain of DYA, but I think the court is probably very happy that you're still continuing your public service to the people of Guam, and I thank you for that. And I don't know how you decided not to retire and take care of that beautiful baby, but thank you so much for stepping up to the plate. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Lonnie.
Thank you very much, Senator Muña, and I'd like to also for the record, note that we received testimony in support of Mrs. Brennan from Virginia Yasahiro. And well, Mrs. Brennan, thank you very much for being here. And I know a couple weeks ago I had the opportunity to tour the facilities and sit down with you and to talk with you. And you have a lot on your plate, but I know that you have a very positive outlook and some great goals that you set for yourself and for the department, and I'm very encouraged that you want to go beyond looking at DYA as just a corrections facility, but really bringing the resources to our youth and empowering our youth. And from the support that I've seen here today and heard here today from your friends, family, colleagues, I know that you're going to do that. So of course you have my support, and I look forward to working with you in the department. So Siduas Masi. And thank you everyone for your testimony today. If there are no other people to testify or any questions, this will conclude the confirmation hearing for Melanie W. Brennan to serve as Director of the Department of Youth Affairs. The committee will continue to receive testimony on all items heard today for the next couple of days. Please address any written testimony to the Committee on Higher Education and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens, and it may be submitted via electronic mail to Office of Senator Shelton at guamlegislature.org or hand-delivered to the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santo Papa, Hagåtña, Guam. Thank you for your attendance and participation during today's hearing. This hearing is now adjourned at 11:21 a.m. Siduos Maasi.